Welcome to Dolby Creator Talks. This is a show about how artists use technology to tell their stories, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Today we're discussing one of the biggest questions in the entertainment industry. How do you actually get a project made? The answer, of course, has a lot of moving parts, but for those in the know, it will always include Hollywood assistants. These are the folks who work behind the scenes to get it all done. And it's true what they say. The assistants of today are the producers, executives, and even the studio heads of tomorrow. So once again, we have our good friend and Dolby Creator Lab grant winner, Carlos López Estrada. He's here to bring together a panel of top executives, producers, and agents. Many of them were once assistants themselves. And they explain how Hollywood assistants work and why they are so essential to the entertainment industry, as well as how it could be a pathway in for those of you aspiring to build a career here yourselves. But I'll let him handle the introductions. Here is Carlos López Estrada.
As we know, this industry runs on collaboration, and assistants are, they have been, and they will continue always to be the connective tissue that keeps all of the pieces together. They are vital in every corner of the business, working side by side with the people, shaping the stories that we love and that we have loved. They're also the ones who get to shape the stories that we'll love soon, the storytellers of tomorrow. So we're very happy to be hosting this today. Many people in this business started out as assistants, and that's where they learned, where they grew, and they began to find their voices. It's this exchange of perspective and mentorship that is what keeps this industry moving forward. We believe in it, and so are the people that we're about to introduce you to. So please join me in welcoming our panel, starting with Brendan Kim, who began his career at CAA in 2021 as a mailroom clerk. Kim then served as the assistant to Centennial Reality in the nonfiction television department before moving to the motion picture literary department, where he currently assists Christina, Chou. Kim was born and raised in Los Angeles, attended Occidental College, where he earned dual Bachelor of Arts degrees in history and music theory. A very smart man. Welcome, Brandon. Thank you for joining us. And we're also happy to join Christina Chou, who you work with. She is an agent at leading entertainment and sports agency, Creative Artist Agency, also known as CAA, in the motion picture department. Chou began her career at the Economic and Trade Policy Office at the Embassy of Canada. I didn't know that. That's amazing. She then worked at a boutique talent management company, Plan C Group, before joining CAA in 2011. Chou graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Is that pronounced correctly?
Urbana-Champaign, pretty close.
Champaign, sorry. With a dual BA degree in economics and political science. Christina, this is your second time in the Satellite Sessions, and hopefully not your last. Thank you for coming. Next, we have Caroline Tsai. She is a Taiwanese-American comedy writer from Indiana. She was a showrunner's assistant on season 3 of The Summer I Turned Pretty and continues to work for Jenny Han's production company, Jenny Kissed Me. Her pilot, Charade, was a semi-finalist in the Script Lab Screenplay Contest. She was also a 2023 CAPE New Writers Fellow and is represented by Artists First. Welcome, Caroline. And hooray for CAPE and all the great work that they do. Please also follow them. Next, we have Mindy Raymaker. She is a creative producer who has worked in entertainment, environment, and media organizations, currently the head of creative at Counterstream Media, where she oversees brand, creative strategy, and execution of its media initiatives. Prior to joining Counterstream, she spent more than a decade working closely with a visionary filmmaker, David Lynch, on his film, art, and music projects. I met her when she was working for David, and I thought it was the most amazing thing. We are also joined by Keenen, who is the executive coordinator for Blumhouse Productions, working in the office of President Abhijay Prakash. Before entering the entertainment industry, Kunsh served as a public affairs officer in the U.S. Air Force for nearly a decade. He is passionate about supporting veterans in the arts and is a member of the American Legion, Hollywood Post, and Veterans in Media and Entertainment. Thank you for joining us, Keenen. And last but certainly not least, we have Abhijay Prakash, who is the president of Blumhouse and oversees all business aspects of the company. He was formerly the president of Universal Filmed Entertainment Group and chief operating officer at DreamWorks Animation. He's a member of the BAFTA North American Film Committee, the Television Academy, and the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, where he serves on the investment committee. This panel is so incredibly exciting, and I know I already thanked you, but thanking you again for taking time off your Monday and allowing us to learn a little bit more about your lives and your work. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I love that the chat has a lot of fans for each of you. Please keep the chat alive. And also, I'm supposed to say, if you do have questions, there's a Q&A function down at the bar below, and you can drop your questions there. And at the end, we're going to save some time to go through as many as we possibly can. So please do that. We can start with a heartwarming note, but we all know that assistants are unsung heroes. Maybe not everyone, but everyone should know that assistants are unsung heroes. So if we can go around, or whoever feels inspired, to share one way beyond, the obvious and the practical, that you think assistants affect our industry. And this could be perhaps something that doesn't always get recognized, but truly makes a difference in how our universe runs. So I'll just open it for whoever feels inspired to kick us off.
I'll jump in. I think it's pretty easy to say that I definitely, whatever career positions, responsibilities I've obtained, I would never have attained any of them without the help of many different assistants and coordinators, including Keenen, who have helped me along the way. It is just like, there's so many different analogies you could use. I will just use invisible glue. You could also describe them as like ball bearings. Like everything that happens moves and happens, and connections are made only because of enterprising and smart and anticipatory actions of assistants. And there's countless ones. I'll just use one example of, in my career, many, many times, to try to get the attention of people who I worked for. They're busy, and in order to get to them, the best path for figuring out how to get stuff done, and even strategizing on when the moment to call and who should be in the meeting, and should I email or should I call or should I catch them in the hallway, was always, without question, assistance. And that was true when I worked at Universal, at DreamWorks, at Focus, every time. And so that one thing of like, hey, I'm trying to figure out this thing, problem solving, wouldn't show up on a job description, but without question, I personally benefited hugely from that.
Thank you for that insight. And I think we're doing this because more and more I feel like people are just openly celebrating the work that you all do. And I think the more people that understand the importance of your presence in all of our work, the more that we're going to be able to demystify this idea of like assistants being there as like practical helpers is actually a lot more profound and a lot more spiritual. Who wants to go next?
I'll say
yes.
something. Yes, beyond the obvious, and for me, like the invisible glue, it just feels so obvious to me. Just even the way that I work with Brendan, I was like, hey, Brendan, my brain is gone. What happened to the thing that we did last week with that person? And I'll literally say that thing and that person, and he'll be there and be like, could it be this? Could it be that? So immensely thankful for that, and all of my previous assistants too. I think maybe some people in the industry may not know that beyond material or access or information, assistants more often than not are the ones like chasing your payments. And it's pretty incredible to see the way that like a lot of people on my desk have gotten to know people in our financing department and our accounts payable and at various studios and other places to be like, hi, was this person paid? We're tracking down checks. It's very inglorious. It's very painful. But for anybody that's, made money in Hollywood, many people were passing frantic messages to get you your check. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. It takes a lot of time. So
That's such a good angle on the question. And I don't think you often realize like how many follow-up and chasing emails and calls need to happen for someone to be able to get paid. And I actually hadn't even thought about how important that like task is and how often it needs to happen. So
Yeah, and I'll jump in a little on the assistant side of what I think is like the unsung thing. And I think in a way, it's the assistant, the coordinator level there that I think in a lot of ways shapes the culture of an organization too and of a workspace because they're facing all directions. They're working with their boss, higher ups, their boss's boss, whatever the case may be, but they're also working with the clients, the other executives, peers. And when the assistant answers that phone, responds to that email, that's that first level, that first layer. And if they're getting somebody that's confident, knowledgeable, aware, that goes so much farther than getting somebody that's nervous, overwhelmed. And I think that can really drive how the organization operates, as well as internally with kind of the idea of good followership and having all of the assistants and coordinators synced up, working together, I think can really bolster the not only the effectiveness and like efficacy of an organization, but just the general morale as well. And I think a lot of that happens at that kind of ground level.
if anyone has anything to add, please do. But I think as you're talking about morale, Keenan, I think I'm curious if anyone wants to add any layers just about how important your assistant can be to setting up the tone of the work that is happening and the interactions that exist within the work. And, assistants are on a daily basis being the first line of communication between you and everyone else. So I feel like the attitude that they're using to approach the work permeates into all of your relationships and all of your interactions. So I don't know if that if that opens up any thoughts for anyone, but would love to hear about your perspective on it.
I can jump in as my experience when I was assistant. I think something that was really fun, but is also a big responsibility, and I think a lot of assistants do this, is you have this opportunity to really act as a filter. And it's a lot of like chance for you to decide what it is that you bring forward and when. And often there's generational differences between assistants and their bosses or lifestyle differences. And that really just means that your job can be bridging those gaps, between like what's going on in culture, what's going on in the world. Your understanding is just really different. And to give like a tangible example of what I'm talking about, with David Lynch, he was someone who really liked to stay at home and work, and he wasn't maybe that connected to like the outside world all the time. So opportunities would come up and he might not be that familiar with someone. So one of those examples, there's a great music producer, Danger Mouse, who, he's worked with like incredible people from MF Doom and back.
I already love this story so much. Doesn't matter where it goes. This is already an amazing story.
Yeah, well, David had no idea who he was, which is nothing about Danger Mouse. Like David didn't know what Doritos were either. Like I had to explain all kinds of things to him. So, but it's like you gotta make the pitch a little bit, help someone understand the context of their work and really have them, immerse themselves in it. And that was one example where in the end, they ended up collaborating on, 2 songs, album artwork. They did a whole photo book that had like 50 original photos in it and an art gallery show. And so I think that is some of the fun and really rewarding stuff that assistants can get into and make happen.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that as well. I think on Summer, at least, obviously it's a YA show and it caters to a younger demographic, to all demographics really, but I think a lot of viewers are are young people, and I feel like it was maybe valuable for me to be there to sort of say like, oh, maybe she wouldn't carry that bag, or like I think her wallpaper would sort of look like this, or being able to weigh on those sorts of things. So I feel like definitely maybe like boss dependent, but I think maybe people don't know that actually a lot of the creative decisions of people's favorite shows, whether it's like a song choice or a cool prop, might have come from an assistant. So.
Amazing.
And if I can jump
No,
in, I think
please, please, please.
just like Mindy and Caroline's point, I feel like kind of being, and I'm very fortunate because Christina is so like hip and with the culture, so I don't find myself doing a lot of this, but I did spend a lot of time as a floating assistant, and I have worked for agents briefly that were a little older and not quite as with, the current zeitgeist and mainstream. And in this industry, things move quickly. Like there's a Labubu movie that's being made right now. Like, and sometimes as an assistant, you're kind of that person that is that generational, translator. Like things as silly as like, I don't know, it's so, I feel so dumb to bring it up, but like Skibbity Toilet, like it's kind of like a joke, in online social media spaces, but like, these are things that are actually generating content and like have potential to be adapted into movies, TV shows, like all the merch and branding opportunities too. Like it does create business. And I do think assistants play a big role in kind of like parsing through what sorts of those things are like viable versus like maybe just a fad of the week kind of thing too.
That is a great perspective. You have a lot of people co-signing on the chat. So relatable, Brendan. Um, I know that sometimes the industry, like you look at all these sort of like big personalities, and it seems like such an unattainable space for someone who's just starting out. Like there's just so many layers of life between someone who wants to do film or TV and then someone who's sort of like at the forefront. And and I feel like assistants really help in sort of like bridging that gap and seeing how someone can go from being sort of like a early career film dreamer to someone who's actually doing the thing. So just curious for anyone who relates to the question, if you have sort of like an early experience or early relationship that helped you actually see yourself in the industry, a point where sort of like whatever your ultimate dream maybe felt like a real future, and you were just like, oh, this is more than just seeing the Oscars and being excited, but this is something that I can actually do, and there's space for me here.
One experience that has been really formative from the start was joining a writers group with a lot of fellow showrunners, assistants, and now staff writers. And I think that evolution has been really cool. We only started the writers group maybe like 4 years ago now. And even since then, like one of us has gotten staffed, like a couple of us have won fellowships. A couple of us have gotten, different jobs with really cool showrunners. So I think getting to see that sort of, it's a small slice of the industry, but I think getting to see evolution across all of those careers has been really encouraging and really cool.
Sure, I'll chime in on that too.
Please.
Question. I think that's a really interesting question. And I think one of the big formative things for me that made me think, all right, entertainment is not just some like pipe dream, vague hope, but like a real practical thing that can happen, was simply just moving to Los Angeles. Obviously being in the military and having this like whole career, it was like, where do you even begin? And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get hung up on. It's so big, but you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And I think the first step is just putting yourself out there and committing to like giving it a shot. And maybe the shot doesn't pan out, and maybe like whatever you're trying to do doesn't somehow end up like commercially viable or whatever, but you're never going to know unless you do that. And I think a lot of people just sit on their ideas and wait and let the perfect be the enemy of done and doing it. And I think coming out here and just pulling that trigger and finally committing to this thing I wanted so long just led me straight into communities that, like this one, like exactly this, of like-minded professionals just trying to figure it out.
That's such a good answer. I just wanted to say I agree. I did a similar thing when I finished college. I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison and was just like, okay, I guess I'll just move out to LA. And so drove across country with a couple friends, and we all still work here. And they both work in the industry as editors. And yeah, I think that's a good thing to call out. Just, make the leap.
It also, I think, is pretty amazing when executives have this like network of people, and you're like, oh wait, how did you meet? We met in the mailing room. Oh, how did you meet? I met them on day 2 at TAA. And it really, I think, is incredible that it's this like group of people that are all starting at the same time, and that all get to sort of like see their hard work pay off, in a similar sort of like chapter in their lives. So all of a sudden they all start getting jobs and helping each other out and hiring each other. And then at some point, they're the next generation of people making decisions. And I think that's pretty exciting. And also just like an attainable way to think about how the industry evolves and changes, et cetera. Okay, I'm jumping all over the place with my questions. I hope that's okay. But for those of you who are on the other side as mentors / bosses / leaders, call it whatever you want to call it, in your opinion, how do you balance being a boss and someone who is, hiring and having assistants working under you, but also being a mentor? And is this something that you think about often? Is it something that comes naturally to you? What kind of thought and responsibility do you put into the relationship from that angle?
I really like this question, just because I feel like when I read the question, I was like, man, is it a cop out to say like it feels like it should be one and the same, right? I feel like if I'm a good boss, I'm also a mentor, right? And I think a lot of it stems from I had the fortunate example of like no staplers thrown to my head. I had some great mentors and bosses in my time at CAA and in other places. And it just felt very, I don't know. I remember these distinct moments where like they advocated for me, or they protected me, or they taught me something, or gave me constructive criticism, and me being like, I want to pay this forward eventually. Oh, I like the way that this person had said that to me, and I have grown in spades, and here's an inflection point for me. And so I find trying to find those moments where organically, like, mistakes will always happen. I make mistakes all the time, and be like, could this be a cool teaching moment? Could this be something where we have a real conversation about something? And I try to also do that with the good stuff too. Like, I really like the way that you handled that problem, or I noticed I didn't have to touch this at all. It was totally all you, and way to go. Like, what a change that was from like 8 months ago or a year ago. But I don't know. I find there's probably also validity in saying like, am I being a good boss? Am I being a good mentor? Right? And what are the differences between the two, so that we can improve? I feel like as we grow as professionals, we manage more people, and it gets more challenging. I love this question.
Brendan was nodding at everything you said, which means it must be
you.
true.
Thank you for not throwing staplers at me, Christina.
No staplers.
That's the bar. Abhijay, can I pass it over to you?
Sure. Same thing, like Christina, I don't know. I couldn't profess to say this is the best balance. I can tell you the way I try to balance it, though, which is definitely make space for feedback, and try to do it in the moment, like, or close to when a thing happens, so that it's still fresh and there's a learning that occurs. And as a kind of a backdrop, or a failsafe, I guess you could say, at least twice a year, having hey, is this working for you? What are you hoping to accomplish? Are you getting enough exposure to those kinds of things? Do I need to make more of those opportunities available? Really like a career type conversation where if you don't make time for that, like, it's just so easy because everybody's so busy to just be constantly putting out fires and dealing with the day to day. So you really have to have a dedicated conversation for that too. It's really those two things I think are the most important ones, which are providing the feedback. Honestly, there's no one else in your assistant or coordinator's life who can provide feedback as direct for their profession and their career development as you. So that responsibility is on you fully. I mean, sometimes maybe someone else from another department might do it, but it's really on you, and you're the best position to do it. So doing the feedback on the fly and then having at least 2 dedicated career conversations is at least the way I do it. Again, I don't know if that's the right balance, but that's how I try to do it.
No, this is good. I think that the culture has shifted in a way that hopefully has enabled these relationships to be a lot more healthy than they were 5 or 10 or 20 years ago.
I mean, just to add one more thing. Sorry to
yeah, please.
It does. There's a difference which is worth acknowledging of some assistants, and this I noticed this more earlier in my career, would fall in the career assistant category, or were interested in just having this be their career. I mean, even the vestigial term of secretary kind of was that. And there were some people that I worked with, particularly at Universal, who had the same person for like 15 years. And that was like, it was a kind of amazing thing to watch. It was like a work relationship where they've been together for so long and so much stuff was unsaid and just done. My own point of view in hiring assistants and coordinators has always been to have people who are still growing in their career and are looking to go on and do something else. And so then it becomes really important on me to make sure that I'm being responsive to that and trying to have conversations with them at regular intervals to make sure that it's tracking towards the thing they want to build towards, because you're doing this job, but you don't want to be doing this job forever. Part of the plan and the success is when you kind of work your way out of it / a new opportunity occurs. There's just a really different mindset versus I've got someone and this is what they want to be doing. And it's really just get the machine humming as much as you can and make sure that environment works in both directions. But it's less about, overt career development and getting into a new position. I think of everybody who comes to work on my desk is like, you're doing this for a while, but this is not where you want to be. You want to be somewhere else. And I'm going to help you get there. And along the way, you're going to help me tremendously by being the other half of my brain.
The world needs more bosses like Christina and you. And Mindy, also curious to hear about your perspective, because we haven't caught up in a while, but last time, we ever spoke, you were still assisting David and you're an executive now. So, I mean, feel free to tell us a little bit about when that transition happened, but just curious how this question relates to you, sort of like having made the jump from one to the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was David's assistant for 8 years. So I was kind of like one of those lifers, but he had a long history of that where I don't think he had an assistant for like less than probably 6 years. And some of that was just because it was such a great environment and maybe not so traditional in that there were always new challenges and opportunities, new projects. So it always stayed very interesting. I think in terms of the boss-mentor relationship, for me, I've always just been so grateful when I've had a boss who is really clear about what they want. I think that's like so critical for someone to know what it is they're asking for, and to have really high expectations, but ultimately to leave a lot of room for how you're going to go about accomplishing that task. And then that gives you just like tons of space to both, learn by trial and error and mess up, which you'll learn from, but also you're going to build confidence that way. And that was definitely something that David did. He was not someone who really told you how to do things. It was more just about like, this is the end result that he would like to see. Does that answer that question?
Yes, that was wonderful. And I feel like anything that you answer should go into a book of your 8 years with David Lynch. For the assistants in the room, we're not trying to get anyone in trouble, so this could be a yes or no answer if you wish, but is it hard to keep secrets?
For me, absolutely not, because there's so few people that know some of the stuff that we're working on. It's like so easily traceable. So even if I wanted to tell people, like it comes right back to me. So, but no, for me personally, I don't really find it that difficult to keep my mouth shut.
For me, I live in fear that like an Amazon drone will descend onto whatever room I'm in if I give something away. And I feel like the past couple of years have really been like secret keeping boot camp. So now I kind of just err on the side of caution and like speak exclusively in riddles. Everyone has a code name, like everything has a code name. So it hasn't been too hard, but yeah, definitely a bit of a learning curve.
And
Keenen.
I'm a bad example for this because I worked on the stealth bomber, so for a vast period of my life, it was my job to keep secrets. But I always like the real juicy ones that you hear. I think you can just take solace knowing that eventually they'll be in deadline, and then you don't have to worry about holding them anymore. But no, I don't think. And I think part of it too is you get so invested in whatever you're working on that you don't want to spoil it for yourself either. And so you keep it moving. It's just part of the job, and you don't even think about the vast repository of like private information in your brain.
These are all really thoughtful answers to a really silly question. Thanks for being great at this. Uh, that's why you're all so good at what you do. Okay, but now I'll ask you a real question to the three of you. What is something that you've learned from observing or being in the room or on set or in meetings that you feel like sort of like core learning, you could have not picked it up at school, you could not have read it in a book, something that I don't know if you remember, and obviously, feel free or not to share the specifics, but a moment where you were just like, oh, I just expanded as a human or as a creative or as a professional, and this really just marked me.
Yeah, mine's really sappy, but I'll share it. It was just a very like internal reflection moment where I was going to work. This is when I was still at CAA, and I realized I had to shift from I was really stressed out early assistant time, first like assistant gig, and I had a thought of like, oh, I have to go do this job today. And then I was like, wrong. I get to go do this job today. And that switch, when that flipped, and I was like, this is my dream. This is a privilege that every day I'm going to work and I'm doing something that may seem menial, but if I look at it in the big picture, I'm like what we talked about in the beginning, the glue, the engine that is keeping this all going and like inextricably a part of this grand thing that I wanted to do. And I think that little bit of perspective like truly revolutionized my own approach as an assistant at CAA and now at Blumhouse with Abhijay. And I think just being able to recontextualize your boss's work as your own work and thinking of it as a team from your own side, I think is just so key. And that's not like a perspective you can just get. I think like even me sharing this now isn't going to suddenly instill this perspective in somebody's head. But I think when people have that moment, they'll have a similar epiphany and a similar like change in kind of their daily paradigm.
I disagree. I hear you say that, and immediately I'm just like, that's so beautiful. That's immediately affected me. So don't underestimate your own thoughts. Thank you for sharing. Brendan, Caroline, anything you want to throw in there?
I was gonna say, I think just being on set in general kind of like rewired my whole brain in terms of on a craft level, I think figuring out, how to write a script and the sort of pragmatics that go into turning that script into a filmed episode. I think I also learned a lot from observing Jenny on set and her co-showrunner, Sarah, and kind of the skill set that a showrunner needs to be able to run a set and the way that that skill set is actually quite different from the skill set it takes to like write a good script and be a good writer. I think I didn't realize how sort of like managerial it was, and also a lot of soft skills like being able to delegate tasks or communicate clearly what you are looking for, or setting the tone or setting the mood. And I remember there was a series of like weeks where we had to do a lot of night shoots, and I think I didn't realize how much I as a person like depended on sleep because by like maybe the second week of the night shoots, I was like, I think I'm like losing it. Like I don't know if I can do this. But on the way to set, we were driving to the beach and Jenny was like, we need to get amped up. Like we need to get pumped up. Let's turn on Defying Gravity and just sing it so loud. So Jenny and I are like driving down the highway, like belting Defying Gravity. And we did that for the rest of the whole like block of night shoots, just like screaming Defying Gravity in the car. And it feels like a really like silly minor moment, but I think it was very effective in getting amped up for a night shoot. And I think also like as a showrunner, being attuned to sort of the ways that you can like boost morale and like look at your team, and figure out how do you get done what needs to be done. And then during our wrap party, we did do karaoke of Defying Gravity, and I think we probably annoyed the whole crew, but it was a great moment.
It was like the arc of an indie film. Brendan, anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think my response is a little bit more granular, a little bit more specific, but I think what really struck me in my time, at CAA and on Christina's desk, is how you read the trades and you hear about these movies that struggle and sometimes don't come to fruition. And it kind of seems like, making a movie is like this battle between all these different parties. But what I really took away from my time working with Christina is that like when you're in those negotiations, like everyone wants the movie to happen. Like everyone is on the same team. Obviously there's like a back and forth dialogue, but I think it really struck me how, like everyone is just kind of in that moment wanting to do the best, for their project, for their client, for whatever element they're responsible for. And it is, when the negotiations go well, it's like very nice and it's very fun and wholesome. And like you get to, really kind of feel this energy throughout all aspects of the production that everyone is here to make this project come to life. And I think that is something that, it's not something that I've read in any textbook or instructionary literature ever. So
These are such great answers. We'll go for another silly one just because. Just because. For Mindy, Abhijay, or Christina, only if you want to share, do you have a particular memory of like the silliest, funniest, weirdest thing you've ever asked an assistant for help with?
I've never had an assistant, so just been in the role before.
Well, I feel like you may have some great stories about. I'm not going to tell a story for you because I don't know if you'd want to tell it, but I remember a story that you told me about like a penny bag or like carrying bags up and down from David's.
See, I don't remember. You should tell.
Well, I don't even want to try to tell it because I'll probably just make it up. But anyway, if you want to share a David funny task story, I'm sure I'd be really welcome.
Gosh.
But otherwise, Christina, Abhijay, there's
so many. One that comes to mind, we were on a photo shoot, I think, and I was like asked to get oatmeal, like cooked oatmeal and blue tempera paint and to mix them together. And ultimately it went down a man's underpants. So it was set decoration, I guess you could say.
That's good.
I mean, there's so many. I'm sure I'm not remembering. I mean, I'm looking at that question for a while, and years of various assistant contributions are not coming to mind. But there's two that come to mind immediately. One totally silly one, and I'm trusting this is a safe space that I can tell this story, and it's not going to get posted on.
There's only a couple hundred people listening.
We did a movie when I was at Focus with the director, the fashion designer Tom Ford, and Tom had, in the process of getting the movie, which was competitive, there was one assistant in the office that he vibed with, and he thought she was very fashionable. And we trotted her into every meeting, and every time he came to the office, we had to make sure she was right there. She came into all the meetings, and she was like a critical person. She was like his talisman in the whole process. And he just had he said to her, "I love your style." And that one thing, we're like, she's the person, by the way, keep dressing however you dress that day. And she just became like our prop to manage our relationship with Tom, who was very fastidious and difficult, as you would expect someone that talented and creative to be. So she was really valuable in that process. And there was no way we could have done it without her. Brendan even got a project without her. And the other one, also when I was at Focus, was actually a really a sweet thing, and it was, we were trying to win this project. I mean, unfortunately, we did win it, and the movie didn't do much business. But it was this moment where it was a project. It was a movie called Boy Erased that Joel Edgerton directed, and it was very competitive to try to get it. They didn't really want to go to us, and the movie was like had a it was serious subject matter. It was about coming out and about conversion therapy and how rough it was and how unjust. But there were assistants in the office who were really, you could tell in the discussion that we had where we solicited opinions that they felt really strongly about how important this movie was and how moving it was to them. So my assistant and one other came up and said, "This thing is really valuable to us. What can we do to try to win it?" And in that moment, we together came up with this idea of recording testimonials. So we went to the whole company and we had everybody talk about on camera, assistants, everyone who wanted to, which ended up being almost everyone in the company. There weren't that many of us, maybe just under 100. Super short message about why the project was meaningful to them and why we were the right place to do it. And it was so powerful. At the time, Steve Golan was running Anonymous, and he told us, you guys got this project because of that video and how moved Joel and the team were by what you put together. And it came from the assistants coming to talk to me about, hey, how are we going to try to win this thing? So that was like just a super memorable one. And the video is probably more meaningful now than the movie turned out fine. It just didn't work commercially. But I remember that video so well because it was everybody from the company chiming in a really heartfelt way about why it was important.
That's so special. Someone should resurface that video. I'm sure it's somewhere.
Yeah. I think for me, man, I don't know. There's like a specific thing. I've definitely asked Brendan to do really to buy some really weird things for me. Like there's a client that we have an inside joke about a baguette. So I was like, can you buy this baguette lamp? There's these things, but I'll tell this really interesting. I don't know if people have ever been to CA during Halloween. But it is like, think of just like layers of the most uber competitive people in the industry, just trying to outdo each other on every floor. There's a theme. It's like, this floor is Stranger Things. This floor is Wicked. This floor is, I don't know, Wreck-It Ralph. And all the agents donate candy and money for decorations, and all the assistants have to stay up the day before to make these amazing immersive things all through the night. Not anymore, because I think HR was like, you guys have to go to bed. But then we would just come in the next day and like assistants would be like dead tired. They were like eating pizza up until 4 a.m. And it's like they've transformed, if people have seen our building, which looks like the Death Star, it's stark and marble and all that, very elegant. And you would just be like in the upside down, right? You would be in like, it was amazing. And we invite our staff, our clients, friends of the agency, and people are just like totally enthralled. And you just go down to these 8 floors. And I think that is the most fun as an assistant being part of that. And then also just every year seeing it, I'm like, it is so hectic because sometimes you'll have like business meetings. And you'll be like, excuse the chaos. It'll come down in a couple of hours. But I just, that is a feat. Yeah.
Those are good. I feel like we're getting some real insights into all of your lives and work. So thanks for keeping it real. Is there, for anyone who would like to answer, is there anything you feel like the industry could do better to help assistants and or early career creatives transition into the next stage? Like, does anything exciting come to mind as like, I really feel like we should be pushing this idea forward to just help the pipeline of young creatives, early career creatives?
There's one thing, and I think probably this exists at other places, but that we did at when I was at Universal, where there were projects. I mean, the hard thing is finding time because assistants are so busy. So it requires buy-in from their bosses to do this, and that was a key thing that we all had to agree to. But basically, connecting with assistants in other departments, and then because you know so much when you're on someone's desk about everything in their world and their sphere, but sometimes you might not know that much happening literally like one station over. But that person also has like super deep in that one area. And so just by having kind of structuring encounters, and the best version is that there's like some little project that can be done. And so we did this, in a couple different ways. We had this thing called the Lab at Universal, which really put together early career creatives and assistants really from all departments together who were interested, self-selected. And there was incredible learning that happened because there was such depth of knowledge, but in very specific areas. And so when there was some kind of cross pollination that occurred, and it was more than just like go do a mixer, but like, okay, you're working on a thing. That was huge. Even the social version, though, can also be super valuable, because then it's like, they end up getting lunch once a month, and you hear a little bit more about what's going on in the other part of the business, and like, oh, like I whatever oversaw, like I think the deal analysis team reported to me, and so then having people who work in the creative side, understanding what does it take to get a green light, and vice versa, like, why are you getting all these pitches about this thing that are so expensive? And that group just talking to each other, it was very valuable to them. And I got feedback from the group of like, wow, I wish we did that more often. I was so glad that we did. And I don't know that it still exists anymore, but I always found anything that you can structure where you can get folks who have such deep expertise to interact with one another, ideally for some productive purpose, can be transformative.
That's good. Someone has to revive it.
Yeah.
Someone in this room.
It'll probably take an assistant to revive it.
Anyone else? Brendan, I saw you.
So I'm very fortunate. This past year, I was able to participate in this yearly short film showcase that CA puts on. It's entirely run by assistants and actually founded by Christina 10 years ago, this year. Yeah, and I think programs like that are really valuable and I think essential for people like early on in their careers. I think, in that process is kind of like a mini film festival. And so we reach out to these different schools and we get different short films. And, this year I think we got close to like 130, 140, maybe even more. It was like a record all-time like number of submissions. But, we went through all those short films. We narrowed it down to like the final 10. And then, we meet with filmmakers. We end up programming it and working with our marketing team to, get all the stuff out. And something like that, where you, as an assistant, like are empowered to kind of take what you've learned, like because this business as an assistant, you are very much kind of like, it's like an apprenticeship. And I feel like a lot of what I learned just by observing Christina, the way that she interacts with her clients, with, filmmakers and producers, I felt like, I honestly felt like I was emulating it either subconsciously or consciously, as we were kind of going through our process. And I think, like obviously the stakes are a lot lower at this level, but I think just even having kind of this like emulation of what it's like to be an agent. And like I had my kind of filmmaker that I believed in, I kind of like really pushed for. And, that was really valuable for me to really see like what it looks like to be on this side of the industry and have that kind of like not influence in like a power over you kind of way, but more just like doing something beyond just the administrative, like scheduling and taking calls. I think opportunities like this are so valuable. And again, I'm just so thankful to Christina, like beyond the time that I've been her assistant, like even the fact that she, along with a few other agents here back in 2015 founded Mobius, that 10 years later now I have the opportunity to participate in that. So I think things like that can be really, really valuable for young folks in the industry.
It's awesome.
Called Mobius. People should come to it, usually in May, June. But to Brendan's point, I think he and a bunch of other people from Soup to Nuts program it, meet the filmmakers, invite people, and they also begin to create their little coterie in their network. So I would open invite to anybody next year if you can get a seat. I know it's hotly contested to get in. Yeah.
Wait, how does one get a ticket?
We got you, Carlos. Don't worry.
But if anyone else wants to join.
Brendan.
I'm like blanking now. I feel like there's like a huge list, but like, we'll
You
keep
need
that
to
in
be
mind.
You need to be Brendan's friend.
Be Brendan's friend.
Sure, yeah.
I think what we can do, Carlos, is that when we get closer to it, we can share it with the anti-gravity folks.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
We have limited space, but it's several days, and maybe there's a way we can allocate some tickets for you guys too. That'd be so
Sorry,
fun.
didn't mean to put you on the spot. I didn't know if this was like an open to the public thing or not. We'll take any seats you want to give us. Anyone else? Any ideas you want to share? I can also move to the next one.
I think one thing that I've really benefited from was just access to a lot of different parts of shepherding a project, from the writer's room to being on set to post to even like promoting the show, which I think are areas of making the show that maybe I wouldn't have seen if I weren't in this assistant position, and then getting sort of to see all of it. And then I think also trusting your assistant's creative vision, or sort of like opening the door for them to maybe chime in. I think I've heard from a lot of my showrunners assistant friends as well that that's been something that feels really gratifying and is also really educational, because you're feeling like you have a stake in whatever the project is and you're getting to chime in where it's welcome, obviously.
Thank you. These are also such good answers. I'm gonna ask each of you a quick question just to get a little deeper into each of your paths, and then we'll turn it over to our audience, who I'm sure has a lot of great questions, including one that I see for you, Mindy, which is close to the one we have. So we're going to combine, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but Chiseli, you and I are going to combine our question for Mindy. Okay, Caroline, we're going to start with you. Obviously, as we have heard today, assistant work is usually fascinating, but there has to be something special about working on like a hit show, or a project that all of a sudden goes from like this little thing that you're helping with to this thing that, is sort of like in everyone's brain. So just curious if there's anything in particular that you feel that has influenced your own work over the last chapter of your life as you've helped bring The Summer I Turned Pretty to life.
Yeah, like what hasn't it touched? I feel like getting to watch Jenny work, because she started as a novelist and then transitioned into the TV and film world, has been really cool. Because I also studied fiction in college, and I thought that I was going to be a novelist then. And I still do write fiction. And I think getting to see someone who has a handle on both mediums and, you know, doesn't feel like she has to give one up in order to do the other, which I think is something that people told me as I was making the transition into screenwriting, has been really heartening. And sort of actually the way that fiction writing and a sort of more interior medium can give you a better handle on your characters. And it's actually an advantage rather than a disadvantage. I think probably the challenge is to figure out how to translate that interiority onto a visual medium where characters can't just announce everything they're thinking. But I think it's been really cool to watch her work in both mediums, and then also to see how owning your own IP is powerful when you're the one to adapt it. And it is kind of an ultimate trump card, which is nice. But yeah.
Cool. I bet you have so many amazing stories. Great. Thank you. So now we're going to move over to Mindy. Chiseli and I have a question about David's process. And obviously, he is just famously one of the most singular creative minds who like very much create his own rules for making stuff. And just curious how that there's probably not one singular way that you could, think about like one way that it's affected you and your own process. But if you were sort of like, does anything come to mind where you're like, here's a way that David's own process really impacted your own?
Yeah, I can think of two ways that I think anybody can do. One is making time to be creative. Like, I just think that is the most important thing. And in an industry that's moving really fast, it can be really difficult to do. But every day, like a lot of what work looked like for David was sitting around and thinking, he started as a painter, so I don't know if that's where he built that practice, but a lot of times when he was painting, he'd sit in front of a painting for like hours all day long, and that was the work day, and that was just what it took for him. So I think that's something we can all do. He has a book. It was his biography called Room to Dream. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about, is making room to dream for yourself. And then I think the other thing is like, he and I probably could not be any more opposite. And by that, I mean, like, I really go through the world, like with an analytical mind, I'm like thinking through the world, but he went through the world feeling. And I think it's something that I try to do. It doesn't come naturally to me, but I think if you're going to be a creative, really learning how to, listen to your intuition and really tap into your feelings, it's always going to make you a stronger creative.
Keenen, I'll pass it over to you. You came into Hollywood after nearly a decade of working at the Air Force. Could you just share a little bit about that transition and the work that you're doing supporting veterans in the arts?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of, yeah, that weird unorthodox path to the entertainment industry, and that transition was, I think, a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I went from a job where I was in a leadership position, and then you have the culture of the uniform where I could walk into a room and based off of what's on my uniform, what's on my desk, whatever, everybody knows where I've been, what I've done, and then there's a very structured, you do this, you check this box, you promote to this rank, you move every 2 years. It's all very prescribed. And then to go into a business that is so nebulous and ethereal, and everybody has their own unique story of how they navigated it. There isn't a checklist of boxes like some universal career plan like the military would give you that says this is probably how your career is going to look. And I think that was challenging. The shift of identity was challenging, but I think again, it's a perspective thing and you learn to embrace that. And I think you can, not to go too far off the question, but I think to the theme of this panel and being about the future, I think you can take the same lesson and apply it to the industry at large, which is like nobody is coming. It's just up to you to solve the problem. All of these crises that may happen in your career in the industry, whatever, like we're the ones that are here now to solve it, and eventually just taking that on and saying, I just have to figure this out and get from A to B and execute my own mental, personal strategy, I think made that transition a little smoother, though it was still rough. And then I think to the second part of your question, beyond being involved in these various organizations, what I really try to do is just identify any veteran that might have a cool idea and reach out to them and build a relationship with them, because I think there's a reckoning that hasn't quite occurred in our society through like the whole thing with the fact that we were at war for 20 years and you have 2 to 3 million people that served either in Iraq and or Afghanistan, and then you have their families, their kids, their spouses, and all of this to say that those are all unique perspectives on America through those 20 years. Each of those, every moment of that war has somehow shaped our own culture here and the way we operate here. And I think there's so many veteran stories to be told that aren't necessarily war movies. They're not bang, bang, shoot 'em up movies, but I think there's lots of stories to be informed by those perspectives of those 2 to 3 million people. And so I just try to always make time for a veteran, basically, and then build my network that way. So I can always say, hey, I know a guy who did XYZ, but also he's a veteran and can lend this perspective. And that leads me to getting, texts from random people. Like I got a text from a former colleague saying, hey, we need like a bomb expert. Do you know a bomb expert? And then a few texts later, found a bomb expert. And I think it's just being able to make those connections and be that invisible glue for the veteran community and just pay it forward. Because so many people have taken chances on me in this business, and the least I can do is just continue to extend that hand.
I think your perspective is so needed, and diversity in this industry is needed more and more every day. So I'm glad you're there and fighting the good fight. Brendan, you work closely with not many, all of Christina's clients, and you get this front row seat to how all these wonderful artists think, create, they build their paths. Is there anything that you've taken from that proximity to like so much extraordinary brilliance that you feel like you've adopted into your own journey?
Yeah, no, definitely. I love
That's
this
also a broad
question.
question, but
No, I love this question. I think very broadly speaking, I think, the work of an agent is basically like, tailoring your clients' careers and like helping them along that path. And I feel like every single call that I listen in on, it's like, vicarious career counseling. Obviously, I'm not a director myself, but just kind of in the way that folks choose to decide like how to go from one project to another, the next job to the next one, and onward. I think for me, one of the most eye-opening things, I feel like with filmmakers in this industry, it's so easy to become pigeonholed. Like you come out with that one small indie movie and you're kind of seen as that one small indie movie guy and you're expected to make small indie movies for the rest of your lives. But like, there are so often, like many times filmmakers want to do something so drastically different from the last thing that they did. And they want to challenge themselves and they want to make unexpected pivots and, just all around all these movements that people from the outside, a third party might not expect or anticipate. But there's always like some concrete logic to it behind it. And I think really hearing, these filmmakers like talk about what they want to achieve with their careers and, their reasonings for why they want to pivot one direction or another. I think for me, just as I've been navigating my own career at this level has been very inspiring and elucidating. And I feel like it's really taught me that at the end of the day, your journey is your own journey in your career. And it might not be what other people expect of you, whether that might be like a cultural thing or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, if that journey makes sense to you, then it makes sense, period. And that's all that really matters. And if you're able to get to that end point, it doesn't really matter what people think or what they might say about this, circuitous route that you're taking. If it makes sense to you, then that is the right answer. So that's something that I've definitely taken away from my time on Christina's desk.
Inspiring. Thanks so much, Brendan. Abhijay, I'll move it over to you. You are leading Blumhouse at the moment where the industry and the world, everything around us is changing very, very fast. Is there anything about how you lead or how you make decisions that has evolved recently?
It's a great question. That you can't do it the way that you used to. I think the thing that probably the single biggest thing that has evolved is there are a lot of worthwhile pitches that we get at Blumhouse, and some of them are for features. Some of them are like Blumhouse should go into this business, like some other business. Or Blumhouse should open like a Blumhouse Southeast Asia office and do a JV there. And there are a lot of great ideas that we should do. And the thing that's evolved for me is I actually made up a little sheet that I handed to all of our senior leaders. Like there's like it was like a spectrum. It was like these are the list of all the ideas we get pitched. Down here, there's like a tiny little segment of like these are bad and just not worth doing, and they're not worth your time, our time, none of it. Then there's a giant swath of ideas that are good. And within those, we really have to filter for the ones that actually can get and deserve our time. We can't do all the good ideas. That's probably the biggest thing that's involved, right? And so I categorize them of like, they're all the good ideas. Then out of those are the ones that are worth spending time on. There's the ones that are worth spending less than 5% of your time, which is like, you do it and like, have someone else inside the company touch it. And then there's ones that are worth spending more than 5% of your time that we really deserve our focus. And then there's a whole bunch of ideas that unfortunately we just don't have any ability to resource right now. One day it could change. And just having that, because it's so hard to say no to someone who's like full of passion and energetic about a thing. And you're like, yeah, that is a good idea. We just can't resource it right now because there are other things that are bigger priorities for us, which are mostly the core things, hit movies and TV shows and games and things that we're doing, but ones that merit the use of all the resource inside the company. And I know that was a real unlock for me to be like, okay, it's actually easier to pass on something when you're like, look, I believe in this idea. We just aren't in a position to resource it right now. So it's up against a whole bunch of other things to keep the lights on, to keep our relationship with Universal vital or whatever it is. And maybe that's an obvious thing for others, but in this environment where it's harder and everything is hard, I mean, that's fun and that's why you do it. Nothing easy is kind of worth doing. But that was an unlock for me that we have to evolve and say no to things that are good ideas.
That's amazing. And now we're all dreaming about having a peek into that document and learning about all your secrets.
Keenen probably has it somewhere.
Do not leak it, Keenen. Christina, anything that feels urgent or exciting about the kinds of voices, the kinds of projects that you're championing. Make us feel hopeful about
Okay. What am I
what's
excited
to come.
about? I am really excited. I think back on this year and I think back of like all of these movies that I saw really early at festivals that are coming out now. I think everybody's seeing them now. And a lot of them are by women. And then there's something else I'm excited about. But like when I think about Chloe Zhao, Mary Bronstein, Eva Victor, Nia DaCosta, Catherine Bigelow, Celine Song, Mona Fastwald, Emerald Fennell, and the trailers that are coming out around that movie. There are so many more I'm missing, but like I'm thrilled. And a lot of these movies are gorgeous, obviously labors of love, but like are not just romantic movies. They're hard hitting, they're character driven, they're hopefully commercial successes for a lot of them. They are commercial successes, and that's exciting for me as somebody who represents a lot of women and people who are underrepresented. I'm like thrilled to just have that. Weirdly, I have some folks that are very interested in like period pieces, and to be like, look at Hamnet, look at Testament of Anne Lee, and those can exist, and those are strange and colorful and differently, don't come out of a traditional development process, are just wonderful to see. Just a whole coterie of women who are just like pushing things forward. I'm excited.
That was you delivered on the inspiring answer. Thank you.
Can I throw?
You had more. Please.
Sorry, one extra thing that I'm excited about, and I feel like is a long gestating thing, but you yourself are doing it. But like the local language movies of like traveling and saying like we don't need to shoot in Utah and Oklahoma. There's nothing wrong with that. But like let's go to Mexico. Let's go to Spain. Let's go and make these stories that are inherently authentic and local. And let's be unafraid to make it in a language. Hey, there's a great movie that just came out in a totally alien language. It was the Predator language, and it did great. It's like, if they can do that, we can do it ourselves, and let's tell these stories. And I love that you see not only creators and actors rallying around it and being like, heck yeah, but also financiers, studios, marketers, everybody being like, we like that. We want more of that. So I'm encouraged by that. We have a long way to go, but let's have hope.
Thank you all so much. These 6 people are out there quite literally changing the world. So the fact that you could take a good chunk of time out of your lives to just talk to us about your experience means a lot. And I know the people who are listening are taking a lot from it. So thank you all. And thank you, Cape, and thank you, Dolby, for letting us do this.
A huge thank you to everyone on today's panel for another insightful conversation on how Hollywood works, and Carlos for bringing it all together. This episode is part of our ongoing collaboration with Anti-Gravity Academy, and these satellite sessions are free, regular conversations with high-level individuals in film and TV, designed to make resources and information available to as many up-and-coming filmmakers as possible. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, be sure you are subscribed to Dolby Creator Talks. You can find links to our show on all the major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube and our show notes, or you can simply search for Dolby wherever you get your podcasts. If you're curious to know more about what we do at Dolby Creator Lab, head on over to dolbycreatorlab.com. There you'll find information about all of our programs. You can subscribe to our mailing list and access the entire library of episodes of this podcast, including all the other satellite sessions with Carlos that we've already released. Once again, these are brought to you in partnership with Anti-Gravity Academy and CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. If you'd like to learn more about those organizations, you can find information in our show notes, as always. Until next time, this is Dolby Creator Talks. I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Our producer and editor is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry, with additional editing by Matt Nixon. And our production coordinator is Karen Kahn. Thanks for joining us.